Hey guys, it's Nemo here again. Just want to say thanks for tuning in as always. Enjoy these new 20 dating app horror stories. Now, let us know in the comments what you thought, which one was your favourite, and let's interact. Let me know where you're listening from. Smash that like button if you enjoy the stories as always, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, let's listen to some stories.
I matched with her at 2:14 in the morning, the kind of time when your phone feels heavier than normal and every swipe feels like a bad idea. Her profile was almost empty. No bio, no links, just 3 photos taken in the same apartment with different shirts. I remember thinking it felt real in a boring way, like someone who forgot to care. She messaged first. It felt casual and fast, like she had been waiting for me specifically, which should have been weird but wasn't at the time. I was half asleep, scrolling in bed, telling myself I'd stop after one more match. I didn't stop. We talked for a few days, but it felt longer because she never really left the app. Every time I opened my phone, there was something new from her. She asked questions that felt normal but stacked on each other too neatly. Where I worked, what I studied, what my full name was. Not a nickname, not a shortened version, but the full thing exactly as it appears on mail. I remember answering without thinking, thumbs moving faster than my brain. She sent voice notes sometimes, never long enough to feel personal, just enough to sound present. I never sent any back. She didn't want to meet anywhere public. No coffee place, no mall, no late food spot. She said her apartment was easier and quieter, and that her roommates wouldn't mind. I didn't question it because I was tired of arguing with people online about basic stuff. I figured I'd go, stay for 10 minutes, then leave if it felt off. I told a friend where I was going, but didn't give many details. I didn't even think to screenshot her profile. The building was old, but not creepy in the obvious way. It was one of those half-renovated places where the outside looks ignored, but the inside smells like paint and cleaning spray. The elevator didn't work, so I walked up 4 flights, already annoyed and out of breath. Her door was at the end of the hall. No welcome mat. No sound from inside. I knocked, then knocked again harder. The door opened almost immediately the second time, like she'd been standing there the whole time. She smiled, stepped aside, and I walked in. The apartment was way too organized for someone in their 20s. Not clean in a normal way, but staged. Everything lined up. Couch cushions sharp and untouched. Framed photos on the wall that were all slightly tilted in the same direction. The air smelled like fabric softener and something sweet I couldn't place. She said something about her roommates being around, and I laughed it off because I thought she meant people in their rooms. The living room was big, way bigger than I expected. That's when I saw them. 6 of them, standing along the far wall like they were waiting for instructions. They were mannequins, not store ones either. These were heavy, realistic, the kind with detailed faces and fake eyelashes. They were dressed in regular clothes. Hoodies, jackets, jeans. Each one looked like a different guy, but also the same in small ways. Same height, same posture, same blank expression that felt almost polite. I stood there too long without moving. My brain tried to make it a joke. Maybe it was some art thing. Maybe she collected them. Maybe I was overthinking it. She walked over to them and touched one on the shoulder like it was alive. I noticed then that each mannequin had a name stitched onto the chest of their shirt. Not written. Stitched carefully with thick thread. All different names, except one. The last mannequin on the end was wearing a dark hoodie. The stitches were fresh, the thread brighter than the others. My name was there, my full name, spelled exactly right. I felt heat crawl up my neck and into my ears. I didn't ask anything. I didn't say anything. I just stared, hoping I was read it wrong, hoping it was someone else with the same name. But the letters were spaced the way my name always is, awkward and long, like whoever stitched it had practiced first. I started noticing other things. The clothes on the mannequin smelled worn, not dirty, just used. The shoes on their feet had scuffed soles. One had a chip on the nose that looked old, like it had happened by accident. Another had a faint mark around the wrist, like something had been tight there for a long time. None of them were posed dramatically. They were just standing there, hands at their sides, calm, patient. She moved behind me at some point. I could feel her there without turning around. The apartment felt smaller now, like the walls had shifted while I wasn't paying attention. I thought about the stairs, the broken elevator, the way my phone had lost signal as soon as I walked in. I thought about how I hadn't noticed any windows when I came inside. I tried to remember if I had locked my car. My name being there meant this wasn't random. It meant she had time. It meant she planned. I started backing toward the door slowly, pretending to look around like I was impressed. My foot bumped into something soft. I looked down and saw a pile of clothes folded neatly on a chair. Men's clothes. Different sizes. One shirt looked exactly like the one I wore earlier that day. Same small stain near the hem. I knew then that she hadn't guessed anything. She knew. My chest felt tight, like I was breathing through a shirt pulled over my face. I thought about pushing past her, but I didn't know where she was standing. I didn't know if she was blocking the door. I didn't know if there were more rooms, more things I hadn't seen yet. I kept thinking about the mannequins, how still they were, how normal they looked, how easy it would be to stand there and stop moving. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember motion. My hand hit the door handle and it turned. The door wasn't locked. That almost scared me more. I stumbled into the hall and didn't stop until I hit the stairs. I ran down all 4 flights, missed a step, slammed my knee, didn't care. I burst outside into the cold air and didn't slow down until I was across the street, bent over, trying not to throw up. I checked the app later that night. Her profile was gone. Unmatched, deleted, erased. I searched my name online for days after, wondering what else she knew. Sometimes I still think about that mannequin at the end, the one with my name. I wonder if she ever took the stitches out, or if it's still there, waiting in that apartment, dressed like someone she almost met. I almost didn't go on the date because I had that tired feeling you get when you've been scrolling too long and every face starts to blur together. But he looked normal in a boring way. Same hoodie mirror selfie. Same bio that said he liked late food and long walks without trying to sound deep. Nothing screamed danger. Nothing even whispered it. That's what bugs me the most now. There was no moment where I could say I should have known. We matched on a random Sunday night when I was half watching a show and half zoning out. He didn't come on strong. No weird compliments, no fast attachment. Just short messages spaced out enough to feel human. He didn't ask anything too personal. Didn't push. Didn't rush. When we planned to meet, it was at a busy food place near the bus station. Lights everywhere. People everywhere. I told myself that meant safe. The date itself was fine. Not amazing, not bad. The kind you forget details of right after. He talked more than me, but not in an annoying way. He laughed at the right moments. He didn't stare. Didn't touch. Didn't do anything that made my skin crawl. I remember thinking it felt like hanging out with someone I already knew from school but never talked to. Comfortable in a dull way. It ended early because I said I had to be up the next day. He didn't argue. Didn't ask to walk me home. Just nodded like it made sense. I took the bus back, sat near the front, watched my reflection in the window as the city slid by. I checked my phone a few times. No messages. Nothing. I actually felt relieved. My street was quiet when I got off. The kind of quiet that makes your steps sound too loud. I live in a small place with narrow houses lined up too close together. The streetlights flicker sometimes, but I didn't notice that then. I was thinking about leftovers in my fridge and whether I should stay up a little longer or just crash. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, locked it behind me, and leaned against it like I always do. Shoes off. Bag down, same routine. I didn't even turn on the main light yet. My phone buzzed in my hand before I could move. It was a photo. For a second, my brain didn't understand what I was looking at. It was dark, a little blurry, but clear enough. It was me, from behind. Hand on my door. Keys in the lock. The angle was wrong. Too far back. Across the street. I could see my porch light in the frame. I could see the crack in the pavement near the curb that I tripped on once last winter. Under the photo was a line of text. Not long. Just enough to land heavy. It said that I forgot to say goodnight. I stood there staring at my screen while the silence in my house got louder. I didn't move. I didn't breathe right. My brain tried to argue with itself. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was edited. Maybe it was someone else who looked like me. But my jacket was the same one I wore on the date. My hair was tied the same lazy way I always do when I'm tired. There was no mistaking it. I checked the timestamp. It was from less than a minute ago. My hand started shaking so hard I had to sit down on the floor. My door was locked. I checked it again anyway. The bolt was in place. Chain untouched. I crawled to the window and peeked through the blinds just enough to see the street. It looked empty. No one standing there. No movement. Just parked cars and shadows that felt suddenly intentional. Another buzz. This time just the typing indicator. Then it stopped. Then started again. I didn't open the app. I didn't want to see his name. I didn't want to see if he was smiling in his profile photo the way he had been earlier that night. My phone buzzed again. No photo this time. Just a message asking if I was already inside. I turned off my lights. I don't know why. Instinct maybe. Like hiding would help. I sat on my couch in the dark with my phone screen lighting up my hands. I could hear my neighbor's heave through the wall. Some laugh track playing. Normal life happening inches away while my chest felt like it was caving in. I checked my camera app by accident and realized something that made my stomach drop even more. The angle of the photo wasn't from the sidewalk. It was from higher, like from inside a car, or from the second floor of the building across the street that had been empty for months while it was being fixed. I remembered the broken boards on the windows, the way no one had ever seemed to be working there. I went to my bathroom and locked that door too, even though it didn't make sense. I sat on the edge of the tub and hugged my knees. My phone kept buzzing every few minutes, not constantly, spaced out, patient, like he wasn't worried I'd block him, like he knew something I didn't. One of the messages mentioned how my porch light flickers sometimes, something I'd never told him, something I barely noticed myself. Another mentioned that I always unlock my door before taking my keys off the ring. Small details, boring details, things you only notice if you're watching someone more than once. I didn't sleep. I watched the sun come up through the bathroom window. The buzzing stopped sometime before morning. When I checked the app again, his profile was still there. Unchanged. Same photos. Same bio. Like nothing had happened. I blocked him with shaking hands. Later that day, I went outside with a friend who walked across the street to the empty building. The boards on one of the windows were loose. Inside, the floor was covered in dust, except for one clear set of footprints near the window. Fresh, leading right up to where someone would stand to take a photo of my door. I still lived there. I didn't move. I just don't unlock my door the same way anymore. And every night when my phone buzzes, even for nothing, my stomach drops like I'm back on that floor, staring at a photo of myself from someone else's eyes. I thought the message was a joke at first because it came right after she sent a picture of a couch that looked like it had been dragged through 3 apartments and a hallway fight. She asked if I was strong and if I could help move it real quick. That was it. No flirting, no build-up, just a task. Something about that felt weirdly refreshing. Like she didn't care about impressing me, like I was useful before I was interesting. We matched maybe a week earlier. Nothing intense. She sent long texts, but they weren't emotional, just detailed. She told me random stuff about her day in a way that felt more like a log than a story. She knew the exact times she did things, when she ate, when she slept, when she walked to the store. I remember thinking she was just organized or maybe anxious. I didn't mind. It was different. She said she lived alone in an older apartment building near the edge of town. I'd never been over there before. The area always felt like it was paused in time. Same empty stores, same faded signs. I told a friend I was helping someone move a couch and laughed it off. I even joked about getting paid in pizza even though she never offered anything. I didn't care. I just wanted to do something that felt real for once. When I got there, the building was quiet in a way that made my footsteps sound rude. No music from other apartments. No tea noise. Just a hum of old lights in the hallway. Her door was already open. That should have been the first sign, but I ignored it because I was already there and turning around felt awkward. The smell hit me first. Not bad. Just heavy. Wax and something sweet mixed together. The lights were low. Not romantic low, just uneven. Lamps instead of overhead lights. Candles everywhere. On shelves. On the floor. On the kitchen counter. Different sizes and colors, like she bought them in bulk without thinking. I remember counting at least 20 before my brain stopped trying. There was no couch in sight. She was sitting at a small table in the middle of the living room with a stack of papers neatly lined up. She looked calm, not nervous, not excited, just ready, like this was scheduled and running on time. I stood there waiting for her to point me toward the couch or say something normal like thanks for coming. Instead, she gestured to the chair across from her. I didn't sit. I scanned the room again. The windows were covered with thick curtains. The candles made shadows crawl up the walls in slow waves. The air felt warm and still. She slid one of the papers forward like she was at a bank or a job interview. The title at the top was bold and centered. Emotional Dependency Agreement. All lowercase, printed clean. No coffee stains, no folds, like it had been printed that day. My heart started beating in my ears. I flipped through the pages without touching them at first, just reading from a distance. It wasn't long, but it was dense. Numbered sections, bullet points, terms. It talked about time commitment, availability, reassurance, loyalty, not cheating or anything obvious like that. Deeper stuff, emotional access, prioritization, consistency. It even had a section about agreed responses during conflict. Not what to say, but how fast to say it. There was a line about physical presence during times of distress. Another about not withdrawing without notice. Another about maintaining contact even during personal struggles. Every line felt like it was tightening something around my chest. Like it wasn't about love or dating at all. It was about control dressed up as care. I finally asked where the couch was, and she pointed toward the bedroom without looking up. I took a step in that direction just to break the moment. The bedroom door was closed. I reached for the handle and noticed something taped to the door. Another page. Same formatting. Same font. This one listed names. Not many, maybe 5. Each with a date next to it. Some had check marks. Some had notes written in pen like incomplete or non-compliant. None of the names were mine, yet. I backed away slowly and turned back toward the table. She was watching me now. Not smiling. Not angry. Just observing. Like she was waiting to see if I'd follow instructions. I noticed a pen placed perfectly next to the papers. I noticed the chair across from her was already pulled out. I thought about how she knew I was strong enough to move a couch without asking. How she knew I'd show up without questioning it. How she didn't ask me where I lived or how I got there, like she already knew. I didn't sign anything. I didn't touch the pen. I told her I had to go and stepped backward toward the door. She didn't stop me, didn't rush, didn't block the way. That somehow made it worse. Like leaving was just another option she had already planned for. As I reached the door, I saw another stack of papers on a shelf nearby. Thicker, labeled revisions. Each one had a date. Each one thicker than the last. Like the agreement kept growing with each person. Learning. Adapting. I left and didn't run until I was outside. The cool air felt unreal after that waxy heat. I checked my phone and saw a message from her sent minutes earlier saying the couch could wait and that agreements mattered more than furniture. I blocked her before I could think about it. Later that night, I read through our old messages again. Things I didn't notice before jumped out. How she asked how I handled stress. How she asked what made me feel secure. How she asked if I disappeared when things got hard. None of it felt random anymore. It felt like screening. I still think about that apartment sometimes. About the candles burning low while she waited. About the stack of revisions growing taller. About how close I came to sitting down just to be polite. Sometimes I wonder how many people signed. Sometimes I wonder what happens when the agreement gets broken. I knew something was wrong before anything actually happened, but I didn't know what to call it yet. It was that quiet pressure feeling you get when everything looks normal, but your brain keeps tapping you on the shoulder anyway. I remember checking my phone before I went inside the restaurant and thinking how boring the place looked. Beige walls, fake plants, big windows that showed the street like a screen. I liked that. It felt public, visible, safe. We matched a few days earlier. He didn't stand out. That was the point. He had the same kind of profile I always swiped on when I was tired of extremes. No deep quotes, no gym pics, just a couple normal photos and a bio that didn't try too hard. Our messages were fine, not exciting, not dried, just enough to feel steady. He didn't rush me, didn't ask weird stuff. He suggested the restaurant because it was close to both of us and cheap. I remember thinking he was considerate. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting near the window like he planned it. He stood up when he saw me, smiled, waved. Nothing felt off. His voice matched his pictures. His laugh wasn't forced. He didn't stare at his phone. All green flags. I ordered something small because I wasn't that hungry. He ordered more and joked about it. Normal, boring, easy. About halfway through the food, he said he needed to use the bathroom. I nodded without thinking. It didn't even register as a moment. People go to the bathroom. That's it. He left his phone on the table, though, face down near his plate. I noticed that only because it buzzed once while he was gone and stopped. Minutes passed. I took a few bites, checked my phone, looked up when the server walked by. Still nothing. I figured maybe there was a line or he ran into someone. I wasn't worried yet, just aware. Another few minutes. His food started getting cold. The server asked if everything was okay, and I said yeah, even though I hadn't heard from him. I didn't want to make it awkward. I glanced toward the hallway to where the bathroom was. Nothing. Then I saw movement in the window. At first, I thought it was just someone walking by. Cars passed. Lights reflected. Then I saw his face. Not inside. Outside. Standing on the sidewalk directly across from our table. Same jacket. Same posture. Phone pressed to his ear. Smiling. Not a quick smile. Not an accident. A full, slow smile that didn't reach his eyes at all. My body locked up before my brain caught up. I didn't move. I didn't wave. I didn't look away either. I just sat there holding my fork like it weighed 100 pounds. He didn't break eye contact. He tilted his head slightly like he was studying me. Like I was the thing inside the glass, and he was on the safe side. He paced a little while still on the phone, never turning his back to the window. He nodded at something whoever he was talking to said. Then he stopped and looked directly at me again and smiled wider. My chest felt hollow. Not tight. Empty. Like all the air dropped out at once. I looked down at the table. His phone was still there. Face down. Not the one he was using. My stomach flipped when I realized that. He had two phones. I grabbed my bag and stood up fast enough that my chair scraped loud against the floor. The server looked over. I didn't care. I walked straight toward the back hallway like I was going to the bathroom too, then turned and went for the exit near the kitchen. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my bag. When I stepped outside, he was gone. The sidewalk was empty. No one on the phone. No one smiling. Just a couple people down the block and cars passing like normal. I spun around too fast, heart racing, scanning everywhere. Nothing. I walked fast, not running. Just fast enough to look purposeful. My phone buzzed in my hand and I almost screamed. It was a message from him, sent from the app, asking where I went. I didn't respond. I kept walking until I hit the main street where there were more people. My legs felt weak like I'd run miles even though I hadn't. I sat on a bench outside a closed shop and tried to breathe. Another buzz, another message, saying he thought I'd left, saying he was sorry if he scared me, saying he just needed to take a call, like none of what I saw mattered, like I imagined it. I blocked him. When I got home, I locked my door and sat on my bed fully dressed for a long time. My phone stayed face down. I didn't trust it. I kept thinking about his other phone, about why he needed me to think he was in the bathroom, about why he wanted to watch me while pretending not to be there. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I unblocked him just to look at his profile again. It was gone, not unmatched, gone, like it never existed. A few days later, I was walking past the same restaurant with a friend during the day. Sunlight everywhere. Windows clear. I glanced inside without meaning to. Same table. Same seat. Empty. Outside, across the street, someone was standing with their phone to their ear. Different jacket. Different face. But the same posture. The same slow smile aimed at the glass. I didn't stop walking. I knew I was already in too deep when I realized I was nervous about what jacket to wear for someone I hadn't even met yet. Not excited nervous either, more like interview nervous. The kind where you start replaying old choices in your head and wondering if they line up right. That should have been my sign, but I ignored it because we had been talking for weeks and everything felt steady. Too steady, like it was being managed. We matched late one night and didn't meet right away. She wanted to talk first. A lot. Every day. Long messages. Voice notes sometimes, but never casual. Everything had a point. She asked about my goals early on, but not in a dringy way. More like she was filling out boxes. What I studied. What I wanted to do in 5 years. Where I saw myself live in 10. She remembered everything. Dates. Names. Random facts I forgot I even shared. I told myself she was just really attentive. She talked about work constantly, but never clearly. Something about consulting, strategy, helping people optimize their lives. It sounded vague but confident. She always framed things like progress, improvement, trajectory. I didn't feel judged exactly, just measured, like I was being lined up next to something invisible. When we finally planned to meet, she picked a quiet cafe in a newer part of town. Lots of glass, concrete floors, plants that looked expensive. The kind of place where people bring laptops and don't order much. I got there early and watched everyone around me, suddenly aware of how I looked sitting there alone. When she walked in, she looked exactly like her pictures. Neat, composed, no wasted movement. The first part of the date felt off, but I couldn't explain why. She wasn't rude. She wasn't cold. She just didn't drift. Every topic circled back to outcomes. She asked how I budgeted, how I tracked my time, what skills I was actively building, not what I liked, not what made me laugh. I tried to steer things lighter, but it always came back. About 20 minutes in, she pulled out a tablet. Not dramatically, not like a reveal, just calmly like it belonged there. She unlocked it and turned it toward me. I thought maybe she was showing pictures or notes or something about work she wanted advice on. Instead, I saw rows, columns, names, numbers, color-coded cells. It took my brain a second to catch up. It was a spreadsheet. My name was there, not just my first name, my full name. Next to it were categories: education, current income, projected income, stability score, emotional availability rating, risk factor. Next to my name was a number highlighted in yellow under something labeled net worth projection. She scrolled. There were other names. Men, lots of them. Some highlighted in green, some red, some grayed out. There were dates next to each name, notes in smaller text. Things like inconsistent follow-up or limited upside or strong short-term potential. I felt like I was looking at something I wasn't supposed to see, like opening a file someone left unlocked by mistake. And she pointed at my row. She asked why my projection was lower than she expected. My ears rang, not loud, just dull, like pressure under water. I stared at the screen and recognized details I never told her directly. Estimates of my student loans, guesses about future promotions, assumptions about how long I'd stay in my field. It wasn't random, it was researched. She scrolled again and showed me a chart. A line going up, another line lower. She explained how she adjusted expectations based on behavior patterns, how consistency early on often predicted long-term outcomes, how she preferred to invest time where returns were likely. Invest. She wasn't smiling, not serious either, just neutral, like this was normal, like everyone dates this way. She said she didn't believe in wasting emotional energy. She said dating without data felt irresponsible. I asked how she got the numbers, and she shrugged like it was obvious. Public info, patterns, intuition refined over time. She mentioned she'd been doing this for years, improving the system, cutting losses earlier now. I noticed something then that made my stomach twist. Next to some names was a column labeled archived. Next to that, a date, end dates, reasons, burnout plateau, diminishing returns. I realized she wasn't just ranking people she was currently seeing. She was tracking everyone she ever dated, still tracking them. Updating projections even after things ended, watching from a distance. She tapped my row again and said I wasn't a bad option, just not optimal yet. She asked if I planned on switching careers, moving cities, taking financial risks. She asked if I was open to guidance. Guidance. The cafe noise faded out. I suddenly felt exposed, like my insides were laid out in cells and formulas, like all the messy human parts of me had been flattened into numbers that could go up or down depending on how useful I became. I stood up so fast my chair scraped. People looked over. I didn't care. I grabbed my jacket and told her I was done. She didn't stop me. She just watched, already tapping notes into the tablet, probably logging the outcome. Outside, the air felt sharp and real. My phone buzzed before I reached the end of the block. A message from her saying she was disappointed I didn't want feedback, saying most men reacted emotionally when confronted with metrics, saying that reaction itself lowered my score. I blocked her. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how long she'd been tracking me, how early I'd been added to that sheet, how many times she updated my row while pretending we were just chatting. I read through old messages and saw them differently. The timing, the questions, the pauses after my answers like she was calculating. A week later, a friend sent me a screenshot, a dating profile that looked like hers, but with a different name, same photos, same bio, different city listed, optimization in progress. Sometimes I wonder if my row is still there, if my projection ever improved without her knowing, if my name turned gray and got archived with a reason attached. I don't check. I don't want to know how valuable I am on someone else's screen. I should have known the night was going to go wrong when I kept checking my reflection in the black screen of my phone while waiting for the ride to load. Not because I wanted to look good, but because I felt like I was about to take a test I forgot to study for. That kind of pressure doesn't come from nowhere. It builds when someone spends weeks telling you how intentional they are about dating, how they don't waste time, how they believe in doing things the right way. We matched almost a month before meeting. He liked long messages, paragraphs, bullet point thoughts without actually using bullet points. He talked about growth a lot, about accountability, about how most people date without structure. He said he lived alone and liked quiet nights in. That sounded perfect to me at the time. I was tired of chaotic people. He never flirted much. It felt more like planning than chemistry, but I told myself that was mature. We scheduled the date like it was a meeting. Date, time, address, expectations. He suggested his place because it would be more comfortable and controlled. Those were his words, controlled. I remember thinking it meant calm. His house was in a quiet neighborhood with identical homes lined up like they were copied and pasted. The kind of place where nothing looks lived and yet everything feels watched. His porch light was already on when I pulled up. The door opened almost immediately after I knocked, like he was standing right there waiting. The first thing I noticed was shoes. Way too many shoes by the door. Men's, women's, different sizes, neatly arranged. I thought maybe he had family visiting or roommates he forgot to mention. Then I stepped inside and heard multiple people breathing. The living room was full. His mom was sitting on the couch with her hands folded in her lap. His dad was next to her, arms crossed, leaning back like he was judging a job interview. A woman about my age sat in a chair near the window, posture straight, eyes sharp. And across from her was another woman holding a notebook and pen, legs crossed, watching me like she already knew me. I froze. He closed the door behind me and gestured for me to sit down like this was the most normal thing in the world. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. No one spoke right away. They just looked at me. All of them, like I was late. Then he explained it. Not apologizing, not easing into it, just explaining. He said this was his support system, his parents, his previous partner, and his therapist. He said they believed in transparency and early evaluation. He said it helped avoid disappointment later. He said they called it a group first date evaluation. I wanted to leave. My body screamed at me to turn around and walk out. But my legs didn't move. It felt rude. Stupidly, painfully rude to leave in the middle of whatever this was. So I sat down. The woman with the notebook wrote something immediately. His mom smiled at me in a tight way that didn't reach her eyes. His dad studied me like he was looking for flaws in a car. The woman my age kept glancing at him instead of me, like she was tracking his reactions. The therapist nodded encouragingly, like I was doing great just by existing in the chair. He sat down last. Then the questions started. Not casually, not back and forth. Structured, one at a time. His mom asked about my childhood. His dad asked about my plans. The therapist asked how I handled conflict. The ex asked why things ended between me and my last partner. I answered everything because I didn't know how not to. My mouth kept moving even though my brain was screaming. Every answer got written down. Sometimes they whispered to each other. Sometimes they nodded. Sometimes they frowned. The ex wrote notes on her phone too. I noticed she had a folder open labeled candidates. Candidates. I started sweating. The room felt too warm even though I could see the vent blowing air. I realized then that this wasn't about him choosing me. This was about them deciding if I was worth continuing. At one point, his dad asked how I reacted when people disappointed me. I answered honestly. The therapist leaned forward and asked for an example. The ex corrected me on a detail of my own story like she'd already heard it before, like he told her. I looked at him then, hoping for some sign that this was a joke or a test or something temporary. He just watched. Calm, attentive, proud almost. He explained that his last relationships failed because he trusted his own judgment too much. This system prevented that. Collective insight, checks and balances. He said he didn't want to repeat mistakes. The therapist mentioned emotional compatibility metrics. The mom mentioned long-term family integration. The dad mentioned expectations. The ex mentioned patterns. Patterns. I felt like I was shrinking in that chair. Like every word I said made me smaller. Like I was being filed down into something that fit their shape. Then came the feedback. They talked about me like I wasn't there. Strengths, concerns, potential friction points. Adaptability, warmth, independence. His mom liked that I seemed polite. His dad worried I wasn't ambitious enough. The therapist thought I might struggle with their family dynamic. The ex said I reminded her of herself before she learned boundaries. I stopped hearing some of it. My ears rang. My hands went numb. Finally, he asked if I had any questions. I stood up. I don't remember standing. I just remember suddenly being on my feet. I said I had to leave. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. No one stopped me. His mom looked disappointed. The therapist nodded like this was data too. The ex watched me with something like pity. I walked out and didn't look back. I sat in my car for a long time before driving. My phone buzzed with a message from him saying he thought it went well overall and that they just needed time to discuss. Discuss, like I was a proposal. I blocked him and deleted the app that night. A week later, I got an email from an unknown address. It thanked me for participating and said they wished me well. Attached was a short document labeled evaluation summary. I didn't open it. I deleted it without read it. Sometimes I still think about that live room, about the shoes by the door, about how many times they'd done this, about how many people sat in that chair and answered those questions hoping it meant something normal. I knew the night was sliding sideways when my phone lost signal the moment I stepped into her building, like the universe itself wanted to stay out of it. I remember thinking that was dramatic, then laughing at myself, then not laughing anymore when the elevator doors closed slower than they should have. I had that itchy, restless feeling like I should keep my shoes on even after stepping inside somewhere. I ignored it because I didn't want to be the guy who bails over vibes. We matched because she had a weird energy that didn't feel fake. Her profile was all planets and moons and vague jokes about fate. She said she was really into astrology early on, which I didn't mind. Lots of people are. I figured it meant she checked her horoscope in the morning and blamed traffic on the stars. Nothing serious. Our chats were fun at first. She talked fast through text, sent long messages about how everything connects. She asked my birthday, my birth time, my city. I didn't know my birth time, so she guessed and said the chart still worked. We talked for about 2 weeks before meeting. She kept saying timing mattered, that the universe lined things up when it wanted to. She suggested we meet at her place because the moon energy would be better there. I almost said no, but she lived close and I was tired of coffee dates. I told a friend where I was going and said I'd check in later. Her apartment was in a converted warehouse building. Exposed brick, long hallway, heavy door that clicked loud when it shut. Inside it was dim but cozy. Candles everywhere again, which should have been my sign after past mistakes, but they were scented and warm and not aggressive. Crystals lined the windowsill, charts on the walls, hand-drawn circles with symbols and notes taped around them. It felt more like a hobby space than anything threatening. We sat on the couch and talked. She was animated, leaning forward, eyes bright. She asked about my past relationships and tied everything back to star placements. Every story I told turned into confirmation of something she already believed. I felt like I was being folded into her system without meaning to. After about an hour, I started feeling drained. Not scared yet, just tired. The kind of tired where your social battery drops fast. I told her I should head out soon because I had work in the morning. That's when the air shifted. She got very still, not angry, focused. She stood up and walked over to the window, checked something on her phone, then looked at a chart taped beside the glass. She said Mercury was in retrograde. She said endings during this phase bring consequences for men, not symbolic ones, real ones. She said she had seen it happen. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. That was a wrong move. Her face didn't change. She walked to the door and slid the deadbolt shut. Not fast, deliberate. I stood up too, suddenly aware of how far the couch was from the exit. I told her I was serious about leaving. She shook her head and said leaving counted as a breakup if intentions were set. She said intentions had already been set because the chart said so. She said if I walked out now, the curse would follow me. I checked my phone. Still no signal. She started explaining what the curse looked like. Not dramatic stuff. Subtle things. Loss of direction. Repeated setbacks. Patterns of almost success that never land. Relationships that decay the same way. She said Mercury made men vulnerable because of communication pathways. She said it always targeted them first. I told her I didn't believe any of that and reached for the door. She stepped between me and it, not touching me. Just standing there with her arms relaxed at her sides. She said if I waited until the phase passed, everything would be fine. She said it was only 3 days. She said she had prepared for this. That's when I noticed the extra supplies. Cases of water stacked near the kitchen, bags of food, a mattress on the floor in the corner of the living room like it was meant for guests, more charts on the walls I hadn't seen before, schedules taped up, dates circled. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. I told her I wasn't staying. My voice sounded thin even to me. She said staying wasn't about consent anymore. It was about protection. She said she was helping me even if I didn't understand it yet. She said men always resist when Mercury is involved. My heart was racing. I started scanning the room for another exit. There was a bathroom window, but it was small and high up. I could hear traffic outside, but it felt far away, like the building swallowed sound. I tried the door again, locked. Chain added now. I hadn't seen her put it on. She sat back down on the couch like this part was done. She picked up her phone and started typing notes. She said the chart predicted my resistance. She said it was good I came during this phase because it meant I was meant to be corrected. I don't know how long passed. Time felt thick. I sat on the edge of the couch, mind racing, trying to stay calm. I asked if I could at least step into the hallway to get air. She said thresholds were dangerous during retrograde. She said half exits confused the energy. Eventually, she went to the bathroom. She trusted the charts more than me. That was her mistake. I grabbed a chair and smashed it against the window. The glass cracked, but didn't break all the way. I hit it again harder. The noise echoed. Lights flicked on in nearby apartments. I hit it a third time, and the pain gave enough for me to squeeze through, cutting my arm and shoulder. I dropped onto the fire escape and climbed down, shaking so hard I almost slipped. I didn't stop running until I hit the street and my phone buzzed back to life. There were messages already waiting, dozens. Paragraphs about what I'd done, about how curses stick harder when you run, about how Mercury keeps records. I blocked her, deleted everything. changed my number a week later. Sometimes when things go wrong in small, annoying ways, I think about that apartment, about the charts, about the calm certainty in her voice. I don't believe in curses, but I still avoid warehouse buildings, and I still check the door twice before sitting down anywhere new. I notice the corrections before I notice the phone. Little stuff at first, the kind you brush off because you don't want to be dramatic. I would say something normal like how I liked the place or how traffic was bad, and he would gently fix it. Not rude, not loud, just precise. Like he needed things to be accurate even if they didn't matter. I told myself he was just particular. Some people are like that. I didn't want to be the girl who gets annoyed over nothing. We matched because his profile looked clean and intentional. Neutral photos, good lighting, captions that sounded thought out, but not corny. He mentioned self-improvement and discipline a lot, which usually annoys me, but he balanced it with jokes so it didn't feel preachy. When we started talking, he typed fast and confidently. He asked questions that sounded mature. Long-term goals, values, routines. I figured he was just serious about dating. The date was at a casual sit-down place near a shopping strip. Not fancy, not loud. Booths with high backs and dim lights that make everyone look a little better. He was already there when I arrived, phone propped up against a water glass, screen facing him. I thought he was just checking something or texting a friend. He slid it slightly when he saw me, like he didn't want it in the way. He smiled and stood up, and everything seemed fine. The first correction was about my job. I explained what I did, and he rephrased it back to me in a more polished way. Not wrong, just cleaner. I laughed it off and nodded. The second was about a story from my childhood. He interrupted to clarify a detail I hadn't even thought about. I felt that small spark of irritation, but ignored it. People interrupt sometimes. Nerves. Then it kept happening. Every opinion I had got adjusted. Every preference got reframed. When I said I didn't like something, he'd explain why most people who say that actually means something else. When I joked, he corrected the timeline like the joke needed context. It felt like being edited in real time. I started feeling small. Not unsafe yet. Just off balance. Like I was failing a test I didn't know I was taking. I noticed his phone again when it vibrated. Not a normal buzz. Constant, like notification stacking. He glanced at it quickly, then back at me, nodding along as I talked. I saw colored icons flash on the screen. Hearts. Check marks. Numbers going up. I asked if everything was okay, and he said yes, and turned the phone a little more toward himself. That's when I caught my reflection in the screen. Not just my face, the whole booth, the table, our food, framed perfectly. My stomach dropped. I leaned forward slightly and saw the edge of a camera interface. Comments sliding up the side. Usernames. Emojis. Words moving too fast to read clearly. A poll bar at the top with two options. I couldn't see the full text yet, but I saw percentages changing in real time. He followed my eyes and smiled like I'd finally caught up. He told me he streamed his dates. Not all of them, just the serious ones. He said transparency mattered. He said he trusted his audience. He said they helped him make better choices. He said it kept everyone accountable. I asked how many people were watching, and he tilted the phone just enough for me to see. Triple digits, climbing. My face felt hot. My hands started shaking under the table. I wanted to leave immediately, but my legs wouldn't move. I felt frozen in my seat, trapped by how public this suddenly was. How many strangers were looking at me through his phone without my permission. I finally saw the poll clearly. It asked if I was wife material. Yes or no. The yes bar was shorter. He kept correcting me after that, but now I understood why. Every correction was content. Every pause was data. He would glance at the phone after I answered something, then subtly steer the conversation based on the reaction. When the chat liked something I said, he encouraged me to expand. When they didn't, he redirected. I wasn't on a date, I was on display. Comments flew by faster, people dissecting my posture, my tone, my answers. Some were cruel, some were clinical, rating me on warmth, agreeableness, intelligence, One comment said I talked too much. Another said I didn't talk enough. One said I seemed difficult. Another said I seemed boring. He nodded along, absorbing it all like feedback at work. At one point, he corrected how I crossed my arms, saying it looked defensive. The poll percentage dropped a little when he said that. He glanced at it and sighed like I disappointed him. I finally stood up. My chair scraped loud against the floor. People in nearby booths looked over. He reached for my arm but stopped himself, remembering the audience. He told them I was getting emotional. The comments exploded. I grabbed my bag and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I could feel the camera following me until the door shut behind me. Outside, the air felt unreal, like I'd stepped off a stage and into a different world. My phone buzzed nonstop as soon as I had signal. Notifications from the app, messages from him, comments tagging my name even though I never gave it. Someone had found my profile. I blocked him, blocked the app, went private on everything. I still found clips weeks later, edited highlights, my face blurred in some, clear in others. Titles like first date test or audience decides her future. The poll result was always shown at the end. No one. Sometimes I think about how calm he was the whole time, how normal he acted while letting strangers decide my worth in real time, how many other women sat in that booth thinking they were just meeting someone new. I didn't even feel flattered when she asked for the selfie. It felt more like homework. We'd been talking long enough that it made sense, and the way she asked wasn't cute or playful. It was practical, like she was checking a box before moving on. I remember thinking that dating lately felt less like meeting people and more like submitting paperwork in pieces. We matched on a slow night when I was bored and half watching videos with my phone balanced on my chest. Her profile stood out because it felt unfinished. One photo, no filters, no big smile. Her bio was short and oddly specific, like she knew exactly what she wanted and didn't care if it scared people off. I liked that. Our messages were steady, not flirty, not dry. She asked questions that felt intentional but not invasive. She wanted to know how I described myself when I wasn't trying. She asked what people usually got wrong about me. We didn't rush anything. No meet plans, no pressure, just weeks of talking. She asked for photos sometimes but never saved them as far as I knew. Just looked, reacted, moved on. I felt weirdly comfortable, like I didn't have to perform. Then one night she said she needed a selfie to prove it was really me. Not in a jealous way, in a security way. She said too many people lied online and she didn't want to waste more time. I didn't see the harm. I snapped a quick photo in my room. Bad lighting. Tired face. No posing. Sent it and tossed my phone aside. The reply came fast. It wasn't a thank you. It was screenshots. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a dating profile. My face, my bio, my age, my interests, my words. Everything was there, but something felt off. Cleaner, sharper. The photos were mine, but cropped better. Brightened. Arranged in a way that made me look more confident than I felt. The bio was familiar but edited. Same ideas, better phrasing. Like someone took my personality and ran spell check on it. Then I saw the match count. It was way higher than mine. She sent more screenshots. Conversations. Women replying fast. Laughing. Asking questions. Engaging in ways I rarely got. The timestamps were recent. Active. This wasn't old. This wasn't theoretical. It was happening right now. She explained what she did without apologizing. She said she wanted to test something. She said she noticed potential in me but felt like I wasn't presenting it correctly. She said she built a version of me that people would respond to. She said the results spoke for themselves. I stared at my phone feeling like I was sinking into the mattress. My hands went numb. I scrolled through the images again and again, hoping I was misunderstanding. But it was clear. She made a better version of me and released it into the same space I was struggling in. She pointed out what she changed. Angles, wording, pacing of replies. She tracked response rates. She compared engagement. She highlighted what worked and what didn't. It felt like a performance review of my own identity. She said I should be grateful. She said now I knew it was possible. She said I could use the profile if I wanted. She said she didn't plan to keep it up much longer anyway. It was just a test. I didn't respond right away. My chest felt tight. Not angry yet. More confused than anything. I felt like I'd been replaced without leaving the room. Like I was watching someone else live my life better than I ever could. I asked her why she sent it to me. She said honesty mattered. She said she didn't want to build something with the wrong version of someone. She said she was interested in the potential me, not the current one. She said if I was open to feedback, this could be a good thing. Feedback. That word hit harder than anything else. I opened my own dating app and refreshed my matches. Nothing new. Same stalled conversations. Same unread messages. Then I searched for my name and age and city using a friend's phone. There it was. The fake profile. Active. Verified. Getting attention. I felt sick. I reported it immediately, filled out forms, sent proof, screenshots, explanations. It took hours. During that time, I kept getting notifications from her. More screenshots, more data. She was still testing, still refining. She adjusted a line in the bio and match rates jumped. She changed the order of photos and got more replies. She was live editing me. I realized then that she wasn't impressed by the better results. She expected them. What excited her was the control. The fact that she could shape someone else's perception of me without touching me at all. The app finally removed the fake profile late that night. I got an automated message thanking me. Nothing else. No apology. No reassurance. She messaged after that saying the test was over. She said I should take it as motivation. She said most people never get to see what they could be. I blocked her. But the damage didn't stop there. Over the next week, I noticed something off. People I matched with felt colder, less interested, like they'd seen me already and decided against it. I wondered how many of them talked to the fake profile first. How many expected that version and felt disappointed when they got me instead. I changed my photos, rewrote my bio, tried to mimic the edited version she made. It felt wrong, like wearing someone else's clothes, like pretending to be a person who existed only because someone else built him. I read through our old messages one last time before deleting them. The way she asked questions made more sense now. She was collecting raw material, testing inputs, building a model. I wasn't a person to her. I was a draft. Sometimes I still think about that better version of me, how easy he had it, how quickly people responded to him, how he said the same things I said, but in a way that landed. I wonder if she ever makes him again. I wonder if he still exists somewhere under a different name. I don't send selfies anymore. Not to prove anything. Not to anyone. The moment that night stopped feeling real was when I realized I was chewing the same bite of food for way too long because my brain had completely disconnected from my mouth. Everything before that had felt normal enough, not amazing, not terrible. Just another date that would probably blur into the rest. I remember thinking I'd forget his name by the weekend. I remember thinking I might not even tell my friends about it. I was wrong about all of that. We matched after a long dry spell where every conversation felt like work. He stood out because he didn't rush anything. No heady compliments. No big promises. Just steady messages that felt intentional. He asked about my routines, my plans, what I wanted my life to look like in general terms. Nothing alarming. If anything, he felt grounded. I told myself that was rare. We talked for almost 3 weeks before meeting. He said he liked building context first. I liked that. It made the date feel earned instead of random. When he suggested dinner, it didn't feel rushed. He picked a quiet place that looked nice without being expensive. Candles, booths, soft lighting, the kind of place where people talk about real stuff. He was already there when I arrived. Stood up, smiled. Everything lined up with his pictures. No weird surprises. We ordered food and talked easily. Work, family, random stories. He listened closely. Maybe too closely, but I brushed that off as interest. Halfway through dinner, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I assumed he was checking a message. Instead, he slid something across the table toward me. It was a printed photo. Not glossy, just regular paper, a baby, maybe 6 months old, big eyes, wrapped in a blanket. Nothing special about it. Not cute enough to be a brag. Not ugly enough to be a joke. Just a baby. My brain stalled. He leaned back slightly and watched my reaction like he was waiting for a score to load. He said that could be ours by next year. He didn't say it like a fantasy. He said it like a plan, like something already penciled into a calendar. Then he asked what schools I preferred for our child. I laughed at first because I thought he had to be joking. There was no other option. People don't say things like that seriously on a first date. But his face didn't change. No smile. No follow-up. Just calm expectation. I felt heat crawl up my neck. The restaurant noise faded into a dull hum. Forks clinking. Someone laughing far away. It all felt distant. I looked at the photo again, hoping it would explain itself. Maybe it was a niece or nephew. Maybe it was part of a story, but the way he watched me told me this wasn't a story. He started talking about timelines. He said he didn't believe in wasting years. He said chemistry was unpredictable, but logistics weren't. He said he dated with intention. He talked about fertility windows and stability like he was presenting a proposal. He mentioned neighborhoods he liked. Schools he researched. The difference between private and public options. He asked if I leaned more academic or creative for a child that didn't exist. I tried to interrupt, tried to slow things down. Told him we had just met. He nodded like he understood but didn't stop. He said this was the getting to know you part. He said alignment mattered early. He said people waited too long to ask the important questions. I pushed the photo back toward him. My hands were shaking. I asked whose baby it was. He said it was a stock image he used to visualize goals. He said imagining outcomes helped him commit. He said this was how he stayed focused. Focused. I noticed then that his phone was open on the table, calendar app. Dates highlighted. Notes attached. One of them was today's date. Next to it was a list. First dinner. Reaction to future planning. Openness to family structure. I felt like the air got heavier, like I was being slowly pressed into the booth. I realized this wasn't about me specifically. I was a role, a slot he was trying to fill. If I didn't fit, someone else would. The plan wouldn't change, just the name. He asked about my parents, their involvement, how often I saw them, whether they would be nearby or distant grandparents. He asked how I handled sleep deprivation, how I felt about schedules. He asked if I believed in sleep training. I couldn't answer. My throat felt tight. I looked around the restaurant and wondered if anyone else could see what was happening. To them, it probably looked like a normal couple having a serious talk. No raised voices, no scene, just two people leaning in. I told him I wasn't ready for any of that. My voice came out thin. He nodded again. Wrote something in his phone. He said readiness could be developed. He said people often didn't know what they wanted until presented with a clear path. He said fear was natural. Fear. That word had flipped something in me. I stood up. My chair scraped loud against the floor. He looked surprised for the first time. Not upset, just confused, like I'd broken a rule he assumed we both understood. I grabbed my bag and told him I was leaving. He asked if we could finish the discussion another time. He said it would be a shame to discard momentum. He said the next year window was ideal and delays had consequences. I walked out without looking back. Outside, the night air felt sharp and real. My hands were shaking so bad I had to sit on the curb for a minute. My phone buzzed with messages from him before I even unlocked it. Long ones, calm ones, outlining next steps, suggesting a follow-up meeting, offering to send articles about schooling options. I blocked him. On the ride home, I kept thinking about that photo, about how easily he slid it across the table, about how practiced the moment felt. How many times he'd probably done it before. How many women sat where I sat and froze the same way. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched his name online. Not much came up, but I did find a forum post from years ago. Someone describing a date that sounded too familiar. Same restaurant, same baby photo, same timeline talk, different ending. I deleted the app the next morning. Sometimes I still think about that calendar, about dates highlighted far into the future, about how confident he was that life could be planned like a project, about how close I came to being another name attached to a timeline that didn't care who filled it. The first red flag was how excited she was about not having a plan. Not nervous excited, but relieved excited, like she finally convinced someone to stop asking questions. She pitched the road trip like it was a cure for boredom. Just drive, music, snacks, see where the road takes us. I had never done anything like that with someone I barely knew, which should have stopped me. Instead, it made it feel special, like I was being trusted with something spontaneous and real. We matched a couple weeks earlier and talked nonstop. Not deep talks, just constant. Memes, random thoughts, voice notes sent late at night. She had this chaotic energy that felt fun at first. She joked about hating structure and said plans stressed her out. I thought it was just a personality thing. Some people don't like calendars. I can deal with that. When she suggested the trip, she said it would just be for the day. Leave in the morning, back by night. She said she needed to get out of town and clear her head. I asked where we were going, and she said anywhere but here. That answer felt annoying, but also kind of freeing. I told a friend I'd be gone most of the day and set my location just in case, mostly as a joke. She picked me up early. Her car was messy, but not gross. Clothes in the back seat, fast food bags on the floor. Nothing alarming. She was in a good mood, singing along to the radio, tapping the wheel like the road already belonged to her. We headed out of the city, past familiar exits, then into stretches I didn't recognize. About an hour in, I asked where we were headed again. Not in a serious way, just checking. She shrugged and said she thought somewhere up north. I asked how far, and she said she hadn't really thought about it. She said the drive was the point. I looked at the gas gauge and noticed it was already below half. I mentioned it, and she waved it off, saying there were stations everywhere. Then she added something weird. She said her ex might be somewhere along this route. She said it casually, like she was talking about a coffee shop she used to like. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. She didn't laugh back. She kept her eyes on the road and said she didn't know exactly where he was now, just that he moved around a lot. She said sometimes he took drives like this too. She said the timing felt right. My stomach dropped. I asked why that mattered, and she said it didn't. That immediately said it kind of did. She said she needed closure. She said seeing him would help. She said she didn't plan it, but the thought kept popping up. I stared out the window as trees replaced buildings and cell signal dropped from full bars to one. The road narrowed. Fewer cars passed us. The music kept playing, but it felt wrong now, too loud and upbeat for what she just said. I asked if she told me this before we left, and she said she didn't want to scare me. She said it wasn't a big deal. She said I was just along for the ride. Along for the ride. That phrase sat heavy in my chest. She started taking random exits without explanation. Dirt roads. Small towns with nothing open. She slowed down whenever we passed a certain type of car, leaning forward like she was checking license plates. She'd mumble things under her breath and then shake her head. I asked if she had his number. She said no. She said she blocked him everywhere. She said the universe would handle the rest. The gas gauge dipped lower. I pointed it out again. She said she knew a place ahead. I asked how far. She said not far. She said trust her. We drove another 20 minutes without seeing a station. The road turned rough. The car rattled. My phone had no signal now. I tried to stay calm. I didn't want to escalate something with someone driving at high speed. She finally pulled over near a closed rest stop. Boarded windows. Empty lot. Weeds growing through cracks. She turned the engine off and sat there breathing like she'd been running. She said she thought he might pass through here. She said he used to stop at places like this. She said if we waited, maybe he'd show up. I told her this wasn't okay. I told her I didn't agree to this. She got defensive fast. Said I was being dramatic. Said I should support her. Said I was already here, so what was the harm? I opened my door and stepped out. The air felt heavy and still. No cars passed. No sound except insects and the ticking of the engine cooling down. I walked a few steps away and tried my phone again. Nothing. She got out too and followed me, asking why I was acting weird. She said she thought I was different. She said most guys wouldn't mind helping with something like this. Helping with this meant waiting on the side of a dead road for an ex she wasn't over. I told her I wanted to go back. She said not yet. She said just a little longer. She said she felt close. That's when I noticed a map taped to her dashboard. Not a Geps. A printed map. Lines drawn in pen. Circles around random towns. Notes in the margins. Dates written next to some of them. I recognized one date. It was from a week before we matched. She had been doing this for a while. She noticed me looking and tried to block it with her arm. She said I wasn't supposed to see that yet. She said it made more sense once you were part of it. Part of it. I backed away and told her I was calling someone. She laughed and said good luck. She said there was no signal for miles. She said that's why she liked these roads. My heart started racing. I walked farther down the road, scanning for anything. A house, a sign, a car. Nothing. Just empty stretches and trees. After what felt like forever, a truck appeared in the distance. I stepped into the road and waved my arms. She shouted at me from behind, but I didn't stop. The truck slowed and pulled over. I didn't explain everything. I just said I needed help getting back to town. The driver let me use his phone. I called my friend. Then I walked back to her car to grab my bag. She was sitting inside, crying now, makeup smeared, hands gripping the wheel. She asked if I was really leaving her there. I told her she could drive back with me following in the truck. She shook her head and said she couldn't leave yet. She said she felt it in her chest. She said today mattered. I got my bag and left. The truck dropped me at a gas station miles away. I sat there until my friend picked me up. My phone buzzed with messages from her once signal came back. Long ones. Emotional ones. Blaming me. Apologizing. Saying I ruined something important. I blocked her. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I checked her profile again. Still active, new photos. Bio updated. Something about loving spontaneous adventures. I don't do road trips anymore. Not with people I don't know well. Not without a destination. Sometimes I still think about that map. About all those circles and dates. About how I almost became another stop on a route that never really ended. I didn't notice the folders right away because nothing about him felt sharp or alarming at first. That's the part that still messes with me. He was soft-spoken, almost forgettable in the best way. The kind of guy you assume is harmless because he blends into the background so well. When he said he worked in data analysis, I pictured spreadsheets, long hours, boring stories. I wasn't prepared for what data meant to him. We matched during a stretch where every conversation felt shallow and disposable. He stood out because he asked slower questions, not deep ones, just thoughtful. He wanted to know how I made decisions. What stressed me out? What I noticed first when I walked into a room. It felt like curiosity instead of judgment. I told myself it was refreshing. We talked for almost 2 weeks before meeting. He didn't push, didn't rush. He suggested we meet at his place after a quick walk nearby, saying it was easier to talk without noise. I hesitated but agreed because everything up to that point felt safe and measured. I sent my location to a friend and told myself I was being dramatic. His apartment was clean in a careful way. Not minimalist, but controlled. Everything had a place. Books lined up by height. Desk spotless except for a laptop and a notebook. No personal clutter. It felt like a space designed to observe from, not relax in. We sat on the couch and talked for a bit. Same calm tone. Same steady eye contact. He listened more than he spoke. I noticed he remembered details from our chats exactly. Not roughly, exactly. Dates. Phrasing. Tiny things I forgot saying. I laughed it off, saying he had a good memory. He smiled and said it was part of his job. At some point, he got up to grab water and opened his laptop on the desk. I stayed on the couch, scrolling on my phone, half listening as he clicked around. The screen was angled away, but when he leaned back in his chair, I could see part of it reflected faintly in the dark TV screen across the room. That's when I saw the folder names. They weren't work codes or numbers. They were first names, women's names, lots of them, arranged alphabetically. My chest tightened. I leaned forward slightly, trying to convince myself I was mistaken. Maybe it was a shared computer. Maybe it was something else. But then he clicked one open. Inside were subfolders, timelines, notes, attachments. One of the names was mine. I froze. My name wasn't common. It wasn't something you confuse with a project label. It was mine spelled right, sitting between two other names I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He didn't notice me staring. He was focused on the screen, scrolling calmly. I caught glimpses of text as he moved. Things like first contact date, response cadence, emotional openness, conflict tendencies. There were bullet points, neat, organized, clinical. I saw a line that mentioned something I'd told him in confidence about my family, worded differently, but clearly the same thing. I felt heat rush to my face. My hands went cold. I asked what he was working on, and he turned the laptop slightly, not enough for me to see clearly, and said it was just notes. He said tracking patterns helped him improve outcomes. He said data was everywhere if you paid attention. I didn't know what to say. My brain was scrambling to make it make sense. Maybe he cut notes on people. Maybe it was weird but harmless. But then he clicked into my folder again, and I saw a date listed for today. Under it, a line that said in-person observation. I felt like I was shrinking into the couch cushions. I stood up, saying I needed the bathroom. My legs felt shaky, but I walked steadily, not wanting to tip him off. In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, trying to breathe. I checked my phone. No signal again. The apartment must have had thick walls. I texted my friend anyway, hoping it would send eventually. I stared at myself in the mirror and felt this wave of embarrassment wash over the fear, like I'd been studied without consent, reduced to patterns and notes, flattened into something he could file away. When I came back out, he was sitting at the desk, typing. The folders were still open. He didn't bother hiding them now. Maybe he assumed I hadn't noticed. Or maybe this was the point. I saw more clearly then. Timelines stretching back months for some names. Notes about boundaries. Reactions. Optimal messaging windows. Some folders were marked inactive. Others had color tags. Green, yellow, red. Mine was yellow. I asked him directly what the folders were. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. He looked at me like I'd asked something obvious. He said he liked to understand people. He said most connections fail because people don't pay attention. He said this helped him avoid mistakes. I asked if the other women knew. He paused, then said not everyone needed to know everything. He said transparency was a spectrum. That's when fear finally snapped into place. This wasn't just observation. This was control. He wasn't dating. He was running trials. I grabbed my bag and told him I was leaving. He didn't stop me. He didn't argue. He just watched, eyes flicking briefly to the screen as if updating something in his head. I saw my folder highlighted again before I turned away. The hallway outside felt unreal. I walked fast, heart racing, foam clenched in my hand. Once I hit the street, my messages sent all at once. My friend called immediately. Later that night, I got a notification from the app. A message from him. Calm, apologetic in tone, but not in content. He said I misunderstood. He said everyone was dated to someone. He said he just admitted it. I blocked him. Days later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched my name online paired with the app. Nothing obvious. But I did find a post on a forum. Anonymous. Someone describing a guy who kept files. Names. Notes. Timelines. She said she found hers by accident too. There were replies. More stories. Different cities. Same pattern. I still think about that yellow tag next to my name. About what would have moved it to green or red. About how close I came to becoming just another inactive folder. I don't put up apartments on first dates anymore. I don't like notebooks. I don't trust people who say they notice everything. The date was supposed to be quick, the kind you squeeze in on a weeknight so you have an excuse to leave early if it feels off. I remember tying my shoes and already planning the exit in my head. Not because of her specifically, just because I was tired. Tired of small talk. Tired of pretending a single drink could change anything. I almost canceled, but something about her messages felt gentle, soft, like she needed the night more than I did. We matched 3 days earlier. She replied fast, but not in a clingy way. Her messages were thoughtful, almost careful. She asked how my day really was, not the fake answer version. She sent voice notes sometimes, short ones, like she didn't want to take up too much space. I thought she was just shy. We met at a quiet diner that stayed open late. Cracked vinyl booths, buzzing lights, menus that smelled like syrup and sanitizer. She was already there when I walked in, sitting with her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. She smiled when she saw me and stood up too quickly, like she didn't want to get caught sitting. Everything started normal. We ordered food, talked about work, talked about random stuff. She laughed at my jokes even when they weren't that funny. I noticed she kept glancing at the door like she expected someone else to walk in. I didn't think much of it. Halfway through the meal, she stopped eating. Her fork hovered over the plate and then lowered slowly like she forgot what she was doing. Her eyes filled up fast, no warning, like someone turned on a tap. She covered her face with her hands and started crying. Not quiet crying either, shaking shoulders, breath catching, the kind that makes everyone nearby suddenly very interested in their own plates. I froze. I didn't know what to do with my hands or my face. I leaned forward a little and asked if she was okay, instantly feeling stupid for asking something so obvious. She wiped her face and tried to breathe through it. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't expect to feel this way. She said she felt safe with me. That word landed heavy. Safe. We've been sitting across from each other for maybe 30 minutes. I didn't know her last name. I didn't know where she lived. But she was crying in a diner because she felt safe with me. People stared. The server slowed down when passing our booth. I felt trapped between wanting to comfort her and wanting to disappear. I told her it was okay and that she didn't need to apologize. I said dates can be weird and emotions happen. I meant it in the moment. She took a few minutes to calm down, wiped her face again, laughed awkwardly like she embarrassed herself. She said she hadn't cried on a first date before. She said she usually kept it together. She said tonight just felt different. I nodded along, trying to reset the night in my head. Maybe she just had a rough week. Maybe this was a one-off. Then she leaned in and lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. She asked if I was married. I said no. She nodded like she expected that. Then she asked if I would be willing to pretend to be her husband at court the next morning. My brain stopped. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. She explained quickly, words tumbling over each other. Something about a hearing. Something about needing stability. Something about how it would look better if she wasn't alone. She said it was just for appearances. She said she wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I asked what kind of court. She said family court. She said it wasn't a big deal. She said she just needed someone to sit next to her and nod. She said it would only be a couple hours. I felt dizzy. The diner felt louder, brighter, like someone turned up the saturation. I told her I didn't understand. She said she knew it sounded like a lot. She said she wouldn't ask anyone else. She said she trusted me. Trusted. I asked why her actual husband couldn't go with her. She looked down at the table and said he wasn't allowed near her right now. She said that was why it mattered that I looked convincing. She said the judge cared about optics. She said stability was everything. I pushed my plate away. I wasn't hungry anymore. My chest felt tight, like I'd inhaled wrong. I told her I couldn't do that. I told her I didn't even know her. I told her this wasn't okay. She didn't get angry. She didn't cry again. She just looked disappointed, like I'd failed a simple task. She said she thought I was different. She said most men ran when things got real. She said she hoped I wouldn't. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to move. I told her I needed to leave. She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop me. She said please. She said she was scared. She said tomorrow mattered. I gently pulled my hand back. Her grip loosened. She looked up at me with this hollow look that made my stomach twist. I dropped some cash on the table and walked out without looking back. Outside, the air felt cold and sharp. I stood there for a minute trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed immediately. Messages from her. Long ones, explaining more details. Saying she could send paperwork. Saying she would coach me on what to say. I blocked her. On the walk home, every shadow felt wrong. Every couple I passed made me tense. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to find the point where it crossed from awkward to dangerous. It felt like it happened all at once. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I searched her name online. Not much came up, but I did find a court schedule with her name listed. Family court. Same day, same time she mentioned. I felt sick. Later that week, I got a message from an unknown number. It was her. She said she hoped I was okay. She said the hearing didn't go well. She said she wished I had been there. I didn't respond. A few days after that, I saw her profile again on the app. New photos. Brighter smile. Bio updated to say she valued honesty and emotional safety. I reported it and unmatched. Sometimes I still think about that diner. About how quickly safe turned into obligation. About how close I came to being pulled into something I didn't understand. I don't sit in booths anymore. I don't stay when people cry on first dates. And I don't let anyone borrow my life for a morning. I knew something was off before I even opened the car door, but I couldn't put a name to it yet. It was that tight pause between moments where your body reacts faster than your brain. He had insisted on picking me up instead of meeting there, which I almost said no to, but he framed it like he was being thoughtful. Said parking was a nightmare. Said he liked starting dates with conversation instead of awkward entrances. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I could always ask to be dropped off. We'd been talking for about a week. Nothing intense. Nothing alarming. He was polite in a way that felt practiced but not fake. He remembered things I said, but not in a creepy way. Just enough to feel like he listened. He didn't push for anything. Didn't overshare. When he asked to pick me up, it felt like a normal next step. He pulled up exactly on time. Clean car. Nothing flashy. He smiled and leaned over to unlock the door like he'd done it 100 times before. I slid into the passenger seat and closed the door behind me. That's when the music hit. Not just music, my music. The exact playlist I play when I'm driving alone at night. Not a genre. Not a vibe. Specific songs in the exact order I always keep them. A song that only plays third because I like how it transitions. Another one I skip half the time but keep anyway. I froze with my seatbelt halfway pulled. I asked how he knew this playlist. He glanced over and smiled like I complimented his driving. Said he just guessed. Said he had a good sense for people. Said music taste wasn't that deep. But my chest felt hollow because I'd never posted that playlist anywhere. It wasn't public. It wasn't linked to my profile. I didn't talk about music much at all online. I didn't even have my streaming account under my real name. I buckled my seatbelt slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. I asked if he recognized the playlist. He said he noticed patterns. He said people were more predictable than they thought. He said it helped him make others feel comfortable. Comfortable. I stared out the window as we pulled away from my place. Every note felt louder now. Invasive, like someone was reading my journal out loud. I told myself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe he dated someone with similar taste. Maybe it was a coincidence stacked on coincidence. Then he skipped a song. One I always skip. And played the next one instead. My hands went cold. I asked how he knew to skip that one. He laughed lightly and said it dragged a bit. Said he noticed people usually lost focus during it. Said he preferred keeping momentum. Momentum. I stopped asking questions. I didn't want to give him anything else to work with. My phone was in my bag and I didn't want to reach for it. I didn't want him seeing my screen. I felt suddenly exposed in ways I couldn't articulate. As we drove, he mentioned things casually. Not about music, about me. Things I'd never told him directly. How I preferred the left side of the bed. How I liked my coffee sweeter than I admitted. how I tended to reread messages before sending them. Not accusations, observations. I laughed them off weakly, pretending he was joking. He didn't correct me. We stopped at a light and he glanced at the dash, then back at me, and said he liked making people feel seen. He said most people craved it. He said it was easy once you paid attention. I asked where we were going exactly. He said the place he mentioned earlier. I asked which route. He said the faster one. It wasn't. We were going the long way through side streets I didn't recognize. I finally pulled my phone out and pretended to check a message. No signal. Then it came back, then dropped again. I opened my music app without thinking. My playlist was open. Paused. But there was a small icon I didn't recognize. A shared session indicator. My stomach flipped. I scrolled. The playlist had been accessed recently. Not by me. By another device. Active now. I looked over at him. His phone was mounted on the dash screen dark, but I could see the music app controls reflected faintly. Sensed. Connected. I asked how he accessed my account. He sighed like I was making things harder than they needed to be. Said people overshared more than they realized. Said data leaked in 100 tiny ways. Said it wasn't hacking if the door was already open. I asked what door. He didn't answer, just turned the volume up slightly. We were 10 minutes from the place now. I didn't recognize the area. Industrial buildings, closed shops, wide empty streets. I told him I wanted to be dropped off. He said we were almost there. He said it would be rude to leave now. I reached for the door handle at a red light. It was locked. He noticed and unlocked it immediately like he hadn't meant to do that. Said sorry, said habit, said safety first. The light turned green and he kept driving. I told him to pull over. My voice shook. He said there wasn't a safe spot yet. He said trust him. He said he'd earned it. I didn't argue. I waited. When he slowed down near a loading zone, I opened the door and jumped out. Not running, just fast walking. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. He yelled something behind me, but I didn't turn around. I ducked into a store that was still open and stood there pretending to browse until my hands stopped shaking. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from him. Apologizing. Explaining. Saying he only wanted to make a good impression. Saying he liked understanding people deeply. I blocked him. Later that night, I changed every password I could think of. Music, email, socials, everything. I checked login histories. There were unfamiliar devices, locations that didn't line up with anywhere I'd been. I reported it, got generic responses, nothing concrete. Days later, I got a notification from my music app. Someone had tried to start a shared session again. Different device. Same area code as him. I shut my account down completely. Sometimes when I get into a car and music is already playing, my chest tightens. Sometimes I skip songs even when I want to hear them, just to prove to myself the choice is still mine. I don't let people pick me up anymore. I don't share playlists. I don't trust anyone who knows me too well too fast. The night felt off before the cake ever showed up, but I didn't know what I was reacting to yet. It was one of those dates where nothing is obviously wrong, yet your body keeps tapping you like it's trying to get your attention. I remember standing outside the restaurant, checking my reflection in the window, thinking I was overthinking again. She had said she loved surprises, and I figured that just meant dessert or a weird menu item. Nothing big. Nothing like what actually happened. We matched about 3 weeks earlier. Not long at all. That's important. 3 weeks of messages that felt warm and fast, but still within what I thought was normal. She texted good morning every day, asked how I slept, remembered tiny details and brought them up later like it meant something. I liked that. It felt intentional. It felt like someone choosing me instead of scrolling past. She talked a lot about being a relationship person, not in a desperate way, to matter of fact. She said she liked commitment and consistency. She said dating casually stressed her out. I told her I wasn't really into rushing things, and she said that was fine. Said she liked building towards something instead of forcing it. When she suggested dinner, she picked a place. A cozy restaurant with warm lighting and quiet music. not expensive, but nice enough to feel like an occasion. She said she had a surprise planned and told me not to worry. That should have been my sign to ask more questions. I didn't. She was already there when I arrived, smiling like she'd been waiting longer than she had. She hugged me immediately, holding on just a second too long. I noticed but didn't say anything. People express affection differently. I'd reminded myself of that a lot that night. Dinner started normal. We ordered food, talked about work, laughed at dumb stuff. She kept touching my arm when she laughed. Not awkward, just constant. I felt like I was being anchored in place. About halfway through, she asked how I felt about anniversaries. I said they were nice when they made sense. She smiled at that, but didn't respond. She checked her phone a few times, face lighting up each time like she was waiting for a signal. Then the waiter came over carrying a cake. Not a slice, a full cake. It was small but clearly custom, white frosting, neat lettering. The whole table went quiet when it landed in front of us. People at nearby tables glanced over and smiled like they thought they were witnessing something sweet. Written across the top was Happy 6-month anniversary. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up right there. I stared at the cake, then at her, then back at the cake. My brain kept trying to correct the information like it was a typo, like someone else's cake got dropped at our table by mistake. She clapped her hands together, excited, eyes bright, like this was a moment she'd been waiting for all night. She looked around at the room, soaking in the attention, then back at me, waiting for a reaction. I didn't know what to do. My mouth opened and closed without sound. I felt heat crawl up my neck as people nearby smiled wider, assuming I was just overwhelmed with happiness. I finally managed to say that we hadn't been together 6 months. I kept my voice low, trying not to make a scene. She tilted her head and said, "Of course we had." She said not officially, but emotionally. She said time wasn't just about calendars. She said we had been building this since the first message. I felt dizzy. The room felt smaller. I told her again that we'd only been talking a few weeks. She frowned slightly, like I'd corrected her on something minor. She said labels were flexible. She said commitment wasn't about dates, it was about intention. The waiter hovered nearby, clearly unsure what to do. She waved him away and said everything was perfect. I pushed my chair back a little, needing space. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, squeezing gently but firmly. She said she knew big gestures scared people. She said she just wanted to show me how serious she was. I looked around and noticed she had her phone propped up against her glass, camera angled just right. The screen was on, recording. I asked what she was doing. She said she liked to capture milestones. She said this was a big one. She said she wanted to remember my reaction. My heart started racing. I told her to turn it off. She hesitated, then did, but not before checking the screen and smiling to herself. She said she'd already gotten enough. I asked who she ordered the cake with. She said she'd been planning it for weeks. She said she called the restaurant ahead of time and told them our story. She said they thought it was really romantic. Our story. I asked what story she told them. She said we met months ago, talked every day, knew right away. She said she told them I was shy about public affection, but secretly loved it. I felt like I was sinking into the chair, like I'd slipped into someone else's life by accident. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to hold me. I told her this wasn't okay. I told her she couldn't decide this stuff for both of us. I told her I was leaving. Her smile faded, but only slightly. She looked confused, not hurt, like I'd missed a step in choreography. She said I was embarrassing her. She said people were watching. She said I should sit down and talk it through. I looked around. People really were watching now. The cake sat untouched between us like proof of something I never agreed to. I grabbed my jacket and said I was done. She stood up too, knocking her chair back. She said I couldn't just walk away from 6 months. She said that wasn't fair. 6 months. I walked out without looking back. Outside, the air felt cold and sharp. I stood on the sidewalk shaking, trying to slow my breathing. My phone buzzed immediately. Messages from her. Long ones. Explaining. Apologizing. Then switching tone. Saying I led her on. Saying I knew what this was. Saying I was just scared of commitment. I blocked her. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I checked my email. There was a message from the restaurant thanking us for celebrating with them and wishing us many more anniversaries. She'd used my name when she booked it. Over the next few days, I kept finding little things. A shared photo album she'd already created, calendar events labeled milestones, screenshots she'd saved of our early messages with dates highlighted. She hadn't just planned the cake, she planned the relationship. I unmatched and reported her, but the profile disappeared before I could finish. A few days later, I saw a new profile that looked a lot like hers. Different name, same smile. Bio talking about loving surprises and celebrating love loudly. I don't do big gestures anymore. I don't trust people who rush intimacy and call it romance. And every time I see a cake come out at a restaurant, my chest tightens just a little. The joke landed wrong the first time he made it, but I laughed anyway because that's what you do when you're trying to keep things light. It was early in the date, still in that stage where you don't want to label anything as weird yet. I remember thinking I was being dramatic, and my brain was reaching for danger where there wasn't any. I wish I had trusted that feeling instead of brushing it off like a bad habit. We matched on a random weekday night. His profile was simple. Nothing flashy. No red flags jumping off the screen. He worked a normal job, like normal stuff. Had that dry humor that reads better in text than in person. Our messages were easy. Not flirty, not intense. Just steady. When he asked to meet, it felt natural. We met at a bar that was half empty, the kind of place where the lights are always dim no matter the time of day. I liked it because it felt low pressure. He was already there, sitting with his back to the wall, watching the door. I noticed that but didn't think much of it. Some people like knowing what's happening around them. Conversation flowed at first. Work, random stories, complaining about traffic. Then he started making comments about how people disappear. Not ghosting, but actual disappearing. He said it like a joke, like he was poking fun at how unstable life was. I nodded along, sipping my drink, waiting for the topic to change. It didn't. He started talking about paperwork, how much of life depends on documents, how easy it is to become invisible if you know which systems to avoid. He laughed and said people think it's complicated, but it really isn't. He said most people don't look closely at anything unless they're told to. I laughed again, lighter this time, hoping it would steer things away. Instead, he leaned into it. He joked about how easy it would be to fake his own death. He said it casually, like he was talking about skipping town or changing jobs. He mentioned it more than once, each time framed as a joke, each time with a little more detail in the wording. Not how to do it, just how people mess it up. He talked about common mistakes people make when they want to vanish. He talked about how stories fall apart when too many people know them. My drink didn't taste right anymore. I tried to shift the conversation, asked about his family, his plans, anything normal. He answered, but always looped back. He said his family lived far away. He said distance made things easier when you needed a reset. He said starting over wasn't as scary as people thought. Then he looked at me in a way that made my stomach drop. Not intense, calculating. He asked if I would testify for him if it ever came to that. I didn't understand at first. I asked testify for what? He smiled and said hypothetically. He said witnesses matter. He said having someone who could vouch for your last known state of mind was important. He said it helped sell a story. Sell. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh it off. He didn't. He watched my face like he was measuring something. My reaction, my hesitation, my discomfort. I said I didn't know what he meant. He shrugged and said it was just the thought. He said people should know who they could rely on in extreme situations. He said he liked to ask important questions early. Important questions. The bar felt louder suddenly. I became aware of every sound. Glasses clinking. A laugh from the other side of the room. Music humming low. I felt like I was sitting under a spotlight even though nothing had changed. I told him that wasn't something you joke about on a first date. My voice shook despite my effort to keep it steady. He nodded like he understood, but his eyes didn't change. He said most people reacted that way. He said it didn't mean anything. Then he asked if I was a reliable person. I said yes automatically, then hated myself for it. He smiled at that, not wide, satisfied. He started telling a story about a friend who disappeared for a while. He said everyone assumed the worst. He said the authorities asked questions. He said timelines mattered. He mentioned how witnesses remembered things differently over time, how memories softened details, how confidence in a statement often mattered more than accuracy. I stopped him and said I needed the bathroom. My legs felt weak when I stood up. I walked fast, locked myself in a stall, and leaned my forehead against the door, trying to slow my breathing. My hands were shaking. I checked my phone. No new messages. I texted a friend anyway, just saying I was uncomfortable and would update soon. I stared at the screen until my hands steadied enough to move. When I came back out, he was looking at his phone, typing. He glanced up and smiled like nothing had happened, like we were just two people on a normal date again. I sat down long enough to grab my bag. I told him I had to leave. He asked why. I said I wasn't feeling well. He nodded and said that made sense. He said stress could do that. He said some people weren't built for heavy conversations. As I stood up, he added something that made my skin crawl. He said if anyone ever asked, he'd say we had a great time. He said first impressions mattered. I left without responding. Outside, the air felt thick. I walked a few blocks before stopping, heart racing, scanning behind me even though I knew he wasn't following. My phone buzzed. A message from him saying he hoped he didn't scare me, saying he had a dark sense of humor, saying he liked honesty. I didn't reply. Over the next few days, messages kept coming. Apologies mixed with explanations. He said he worked in logistics. He said thinking in scenarios was part of his brain. He said people misunderstood him all the time. Then the tone shifted. He said he thought it was different. He said I seemed strong. He said he needed people who didn't panic. I blocked him. A week later, I saw something online that made my stomach flip. A local news article about a man reported missing in a nearby town. The photo looked like him. Same build, same face, different name. I told myself it was a coincidence. Lots of people look alike. I didn't click the article. 2 days after that, I got a message from an unknown number. It was just a question, asking if I remembered the bar, asking if I remembered what day it was. I didn't respond. I changed my number the next day. Sometimes I still think about how easily he asked that question, like it was normal, like asking someone to pass the salt. I think about how many people laughed it off before me, how many said yes without realizing what they were agreeing to. I don't go to dim bars anymore. I don't stay when jokes feel wrong. And I'm going to answer hypothetical questions that feel like rehearsals. The first thing she said to me in person was that she hated liars, and she said it with this half smile like it was a fun personality quirk instead of a warning. I laughed because that felt like the safe response. Everyone hates liars. That's normal. What wasn't normal was how she watched my face when I laughed, like she was waiting for something to slip. We matched a few days earlier, and her messages were sharp in a way that felt confident. Not flirty, not cold, just direct. She said she valued honesty above everything else. She said trust was fragile. She said most people lied without realizing it. I thought she meant big stuff. Cheating, hiding things. The obvious ones. I didn't think she meant the tiny, meaningless stuff people say without thinking. We met at a quiet bar that tried too hard to feel cozy. Low lights, small tables, chalkboard menu. She chose it because she said loud places made it easier for people to hide. That should have stood out more to me, but I was already there and didn't want to read too much into it. She sat across from me, hands folded, posture straight, no phone on the table, no distractions. She looked calm, almost relaxed, like she'd done this exact thing many times before. The first few minutes felt normal enough. Work talk, hobbies, light stuff. But even then, I noticed how often she tilted her head when I answered something. How she paused just a second too long before responding. Then the questions changed. She asked things that sounded casual but weren't. Questions with no clear answer. She asked if I preferred mornings or nights. I said nights. She nodded and asked why. I answered honestly. She nodded again, slower this time, eyes locked on mine. She asked if I ever lied to spare someone's feelings. I said probably, like everyone does. She smiled at that, but didn't look happy. She asked if I considered that lying or kindness. I said both. She wrote something down in a small notebook she placed on her lap without me noticing. I laughed awkwardly and asked what she was writing. She said notes helped her remember patterns. Patterns. The questions kept coming. How often I was late, whether I finished projects early or right on time, if I remembered the last time I changed my routine voluntarily, if I ever exaggerated stories to make them sound better. Nothing I could say felt safe. Every answer felt like a trap I couldn't see until I stepped into it. At some point, she leaned back and finally admitted what she was doing. She said she designed questions to catch micro lies. Not big lies. Small ones. The ones people didn't even realize they told. She said those were the most important. She said they showed character. My stomach dropped. I asked what she meant by catch. She said inconsistencies, hesitation, over-explaining. She said people revealed themselves in the gaps between answers. She said it was fascinating. I felt heat creep up my neck. I told her this felt more like an interview than a date. She smiled and said dates were interviews. Most people just pretended otherwise. She said she preferred transparency. Then she asked me the same question twice, phrased slightly differently. I answered both honestly, but my wording wasn't identical. She immediately pointed it out. She said that difference mattered. She asked which answer was true. I stared at her, heart racing, trying to understand how I'd ended up here. I told her both were true. She shook her head and said truth didn't shift like that. She said facts stayed still. She started listing things she noticed already. The way I touched my face when thinking. How my voice went slightly higher when I wasn't sure. How I smiled when uncomfortable. She said she'd noticed it in messages too. Response timing. Punctuation changes. Emoji use. She knew when I hesitated before replying. I asked how she tracked that. She said the app showed enough if you paid attention. She said she also kept screenshots. She said comparing versions helped. I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. The bar noise faded out again, like it always does right before something goes wrong. I asked why she cared this much. She said her last relationship ended because of lies. She said she promised herself never again. She said prevention mattered more than healing. She flipped the notebook around without asking. My name was at the top of the page. Under it were bullet points. Things like deflects with humor, minimizes uncertainty, aligns answers socially. One line said probable honesty with adaptive framing. Adaptive framing. I pushed the notebook back toward her and told her this was too much. She didn't look surprised. She said most liars reacted that way when confronted. She said discomfort was expected. That word hit hard. Confronted, like I'd been accused of something. I told her I wasn't lying. She nodded and said of course I would say that. She said liars always believe their own version. She said that's why micro lies mattered more than intent. My hands were shaking now. I wrapped them around my glass just to keep them still. I asked how many dates she'd done this on. She said enough to refine the system. She said early versions were messier. She said people got better at hiding the practice. Hiding. I realized then that this wasn't about honesty at all. It was about control. About staying one step ahead of someone else's humanity. If everything was a test, no one could surprise her. She asked me another question. Something about childhood. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, trying to decide what was safer, answering or refusing. She smiled and wrote something down. Silence as evasion. That was it. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. A couple people glanced over. I didn't care. I told her I was leaving. She said that response itself was informative. She said avoidance often followed exposure. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. She didn't follow. She didn't call after me. She just sat there calmly, pen moving across the page, probably summarizing me. Outside, the air felt cold and real. My heart was pounding so hard I had to lean against the wall for a minute. My phone buzzed with a message from her before I'd even taken 3 steps. She said thank you for participating. She said clarity was rare. I blocked her. Later that night, I couldn't stop replaying the date in my head. Every answer, every pause, every tiny moment I'd never thought twice about before. It felt like she'd reached inside my head and labeled things I didn't know had names. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched her username online. I found a forum post about detecting deception in dating. The writing style felt familiar. The comments praised the method. Some asked for templates. I closed the page and didn't dig further. I still catch myself hesitating before answering simple questions now. Like my brain is waiting for a trap that isn't there. I don't like being analyzed. I don't like people who say they hate liars more than they like people. I didn't catch it at first because everything about him felt smooth in a way that made my brain relax. Not exciting smooth, just consistent. Like nothing would surprise me. I remember thinking it was nice to finally meet someone who didn't ramble or overshare or turn every story into a performance. He felt practiced without feeling fake, which sounds contradictory but made sense at the time. We mashed on a boring night and talked for almost 2 weeks before meeting. His messages were clean, good pacing, thoughtful replies. He told stories that felt complete but not rehearsed, just enough detail to sound real without dragging. I noticed he used the same phrases sometimes, but I told myself people repeat themselves. That's normal. Our first date was at a small place near the river. Outdoor tables, string lights, low noise, the kind of setting that makes conversations feel more important than they are. He told me about his childhood. Nothing dramatic, moved around a bit, learned to adapt. I remember nodding along, thinking I'd heard similar stories from other people, but his felt calmer. We went on a second date a few days later. Different place. Same tone. He brought up the childhood story again, but this time a detail was off. Not huge, just the age he was when something happened. I noticed it but didn't say anything. Memories blur. I get that. The third date was when my stomach did that slow drop thing. We were sitting on a bench after dinner just talking, and he told the same story again. Same opening. Same conclusion. But the middle was different. The reason they moved had changed. The tone shifted slightly. The lesson at the end was more flattering this time. I laughed it off and said I thought he told it differently before. He smiled and said maybe I remembered it wrong. He said stories evolve the more you understood them. That line stuck with me. Over the next week, I started noticing it more. Not just that one story, all of them. His job history changed slightly depending on when he talked about it. Sometimes he left because of growth. Sometimes because of burnout. Sometimes because of management. Never dramatic, just adjusted. His relationship history shifted too. Number of months, who ended things, what he learned. It was subtle. If I hadn't been paying attention, I wouldn't have caught it at all. I asked him about it once gently. He didn't get defensive. He said context mattered. He said people told different versions of themselves to different people without realizing it. He said that didn't make them dishonest. It made them adaptable. Adaptable. The word felt slippery. A few nights later, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the app again, not to message him, just to look. His profile was still there. Same photos, same bio. Then I noticed something new. A prompt answer I didn't remember. A story I recognized but told slightly differently. My chest tightened. I made a fake account. I didn't plan to. I just did it. Different name. Different photos. Generic. I swiped until I found him again. Same smile. Same bio. But the answers were different. Same stories. Different versions. The childhood story was there, but the details matched the version he told me on our second date, not the first. Another prompt had a work story that matched something he told me weeks earlier, but with a different ending. Even the tone was adjusted. Softer. More vulnerable. I felt sick. I matched with him on the fake account. He messaged first. Same opening line he used with me. Same pacing. But the questions he asked were slightly different. Tailored. When he told stories, they were versions I hadn't heard yet. Same framework. Different emotional angles. Like he was testing which one landed better. I scrolled through his profile screenshots I'd saved and lined them up next to my chat history. It was obvious now. He wasn't lying randomly. He was running versions. Every story was modular. He didn't change big facts, just emphasis, motive, timing. Enough to shape how he appeared without breaking believability. If one version didn't work, he had another ready. I asked him on the fake account about something specific he told me in person. He replied with a story I had never heard. Same event, different takeaway, more flattering, more impressive. That's when it hit me. None of the stories were meant to be true in the way I thought. They were tools. He wasn't sharing memories. He was selecting outcomes. I confronted him in person the next time we met. I didn't accuse. I just mentioned a detail and asked which version was right. He paused longer than usual, then smiled and said both were. He said memory wasn't a recording. He said truth depended on perspective. I asked him if he told everyone different versions. He didn't deny it. He said people responded to different things. He said he learned early on that authenticity didn't mean consistency. It meant resonance. He said he wanted to connect, and connection required flexibility. Flexibility. I asked if there was a version of him that stayed the same no matter who he talked to. He looked genuinely confused by the question, like it hadn't occurred to him. That scared me more than anything else. After that, I couldn't unsee it. Every sentence felt like a choice instead of a fact. Every pause felt like him deciding which version I deserved. I felt like I was dating a menu. I ended things the next day, kept it simple. He didn't argue. He said he understood. He said not everyone liked complexity. He said he hoped I found someone more straightforward. Later that night, I checked the fit account again. He had updated his profile. One of the stories had changed. A detail I recognized from our last conversation now appeared there, polished and ready. I deleted the fake account, blocked him everywhere. A week later, a friend sent me a screenshot. She'd matched with someone new. Same guy, different name, same photos, different bio. The story she mentioned sounded familiar but not exact. I didn't tell her everything. I just said to be careful. Sometimes I think about how easy it would be to believe him forever if I hadn't noticed the small shifts. How many people never compare versions? How many never realize they're carrying an optimized draft? I don't trust perfect storytellers anymore. I don't trust people whose past always fits the moment. And when someone's life sounds too adaptable, I start listening for what stays the same. The question sounded harmless when she asked it, like the kind of thing people bring up when they're half joking and half bored. I remember leaning back in my chair and thinking this was the moment where the date either got cheesy or stayed light. She asked if I believed in soulmates, and I almost laughed because it felt like a setup for a dumb debate. I didn't know it was a warning. We'd matched a week earlier and talked every night since. Not deep talks, just steady back and forth that made the days blur together. She was curious in a way that felt flattering. Asked about my habits, my routines, my family. I didn't think much of it because family comes up a lot when you're trying to sound human online. I mentioned my brothers once, my cousin another time. Nothing specific. Nothing that should have mattered. We met at a small restaurant near the edge of town. Quiet, warm, the kind of place where the staff leaves you alone. She got there early and had already ordered water for both of us. I noticed that and told myself it was thoughtful. I keep doing that in these stories, noticing something and forgiving it immediately. The date was fine at first. She laughed easily, leaned in when I talked, remembered things I said earlier in the week. She said she liked people who were close with their family. She said it showed stability. I nodded, feeling weirdly proud. Halfway through, she asked the soulmate question. I said I wasn't sure. I said it sounded nice but unrealistic. She smiled like she'd expected that answer. She asked if I thought compatibility ran in families. I laughed and said that didn't make sense. That's when she pulled out her phone. She didn't shove it in my face. She just turned it slightly so I could see screenshots, dating app screens, profiles. I didn't recognize them at first. Different faces, different bios. Then my brain caught up. Same last name. My last name. My chest tightened. I leaned closer without meaning to. One profile was my older brother, same photos he'd shown me months ago. Another was my cousin. Another was my younger brother who had just started using apps recently and told no one. I recognized the backgrounds, the kitchens, the mirrors. She scrolled calmly. There were messages too, matches, conversations, timestamps, some recent, some older, some still active. She said she believed soulmates weren't just individuals. She said they were patterns. She said bloodlines carried compatibility traits. She said once she matched with one of us by accident, she got curious. Curious. She said it like it explained everything. I couldn't speak. My mouth felt dry. My heart was pounding so hard I thought people at other tables could hear it. I asked how she even found them. She said it wasn't hard. She said people shared more than they realized. Photos at family events, tagged posts, similar faces, similar cities. She said once you noticed patterns, the apps did the rest. She scrolled again and showed me a folder in her Photos app, labeled with my last name. Inside were screenshots arranged neatly. Names written underneath. Notes. Notes. Things like sense of humor similar. Conflict style overlap. Attachment indicators consistent. She pointed out similarities between messages they sent her. Phrasing. Timing. Jokes. She said it felt reassuring, like confirmation. I felt sick. I asked why she was showing me this. She said honesty mattered. She said if we were going to talk about soulmates, I deserved to know the scope. She said she didn't want secrets. I asked if they knew about each other. She shook her head. She said it would have complicated the data. She said she wanted clean results. Clean. My hands were shaking under the table. I told her this wasn't okay. I told her she crossed a line. She frowned slightly, like she didn't understand why I was upset. She said she never promised exclusivity. She said dating was about exploration. She said family connections were fascinating. I asked if she planned to tell him about me. She paused, then said she hadn't decided yet. She said she liked to see how things unfolded naturally. She said sometimes revealing information too early disrupted outcomes. Outcomes. I stood up. My chair scraped loud enough that a couple people looked over. I didn't care. I told her I was leaving. She looked genuinely surprised. She said she thought I'd be interested. She said most people liked feeling chosen. She said this meant something bigger. Bigger. I walked out without waiting for a response. Outside, the night air hit me hard. I leaned against the wall, breathing fast, trying not to throw up. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Messages from her, explaining more, clarifying, saying she never did anything physical with them, saying it was just conversations, saying she felt closer to me because of it. I blocked her. The next morning, I called my brother, asked if he'd matched with someone recently. He laughed and said, yeah, a girl who asked weird questions about family. I didn't tell him everything. I just told him to unmatch and be careful. Later that day, my cousin texted me out of nowhere asking if I knew a girl by that name. My stomach dropped. Over the next few days, bits and pieces came out. She'd asked similar questions to all of us, framed slightly differently, always circling back to family, values, patterns. None of them knew about each other until I said something. We'd all blocked her. A week later, I saw a new profile on the app. Different name, same face. Bio talking about believing in soul connections and deeper compatibility. The city was changed. The age adjusted slightly. I deleted the app that night. Sometimes I still think about that folder with my last name on it, about how calmly she scrolled through my family like it was a menu, about how close she got to pulling us into something we didn't consent to. Family gatherings feel different now. Not broken, just fragile in a way I didn't expect. I don't share photos online anymore. I don't tag locations. And when someone asks about soulmates, I change the subject. The weirdest part is that the date itself was fine. Not amazing, not awful, Just fine enough that I didn't think twice about it afterward. That's why what happened next messed with my head so badly. There was no blow-up, no argument, no dramatic moment where I thought I was in danger. I walked away thinking I'd just quietly move on like I always do. We matched on a slow night when I was half scrolling, half zoning out. His profile didn't stand out much. Decent photos. Normal bio. Nothing that screamed red flag. Our chat was easy. Not intense, not dry. He didn't push for anything. When we planned to meet, it felt low pressure. Coffee place. Early evening. Public. Safe. The date went exactly how you'd expect. Small talk. Laughs at the right moments. A couple awkward pauses that didn't last long. He talked about work. I talked about mine. He didn't overshare. Didn't get too personal. Didn't say anything that made my skin crawl. When it ended, we hugged quickly and went our separate ways. I didn't feel sparks, but I didn't feel alarmed either. On the walk home, I already knew I wasn't interested. Not because of anything he did wrong. Just no connection. I didn't want to drag it out or do the slow fade thing. I've always hated that. So when I got home, I unmatched him. Quick, clean, done. I put my phone down and went to change clothes. When I picked it back up, there was a new notification. New match. The profile photo looked familiar in a vague way. Different haircut, different angle, different name. But something about the face made my stomach drop. I opened the chat. The message was already there. It said I couldn't ghost him and that we weren't done. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stared at the screen, hoping I was reading it wrong. Hoping it was a joke. Hoping it was someone else with bad timing. I clicked into the profile. Same city, same age, same job description. Even the bio had the same structure as his old one, just rewritten slightly. Different words, same meaning. My hands started shaking. I blocked the profile immediately. Didn't respond. Didn't hesitate. 2 minutes later, another notification. Another new match. Another profile. This one had a photo I hadn't seen before. Him in a hoodie, face partly turned away. Different name again. The message was already waiting. This one said that unmatching didn't count as an ending. I felt sick. I blocked that one too. Then another came. And another. Each profile slightly different. Different names. Different photos. But all clearly him. Same face. Same eyes. Same tone in the messages. Calm. Confident. Annoyed in a controlled way. He said ghosting was disrespectful. He said communication mattered. He said adults talk things out. He said he deserved an explanation. I locked my phone and sat on my bed, heart racing, trying to think. I hadn't given him my number. Hadn't given him socials. Hadn't told him where I live exactly. But he was still finding me. I turned my phone back on and checked the app settings. My discoverability was still on. I turned it off. I thought that would end it. Another message came through anyway. This one said that settings didn't stop conversations already in motion. I felt cold all over. I blocked that profile too. I went into the bathroom and splashed water on my face. My reflection looked wrong. Pale, eyes too wide. I kept replaying the date in my head, trying to find the moment where I missed something. Some hint that he'd react like this, but there wasn't one. That was the worst part. Nothing felt off until it was already happening. When I came back to my room, there was another notification. Not a match this time. A like. From yet another profile. This one didn't send a message right away. It just sat there waiting, like he wanted me to make the next move. I deleted the app. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 10 minutes later, I got a message request on a different app I barely use. From a blank account. No photo. No posts. The message was short. It said that disappearing didn't make things go away. It said avoidance only delayed resolution. I blocked it. Another request came in from a different account seconds later. Same wording. Slightly rephrased, like he was testing which version would get a response. My chest felt tight. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside just to get air. The hallway felt too quiet. Every sound made me jump. I walked around the block, phone clutched in my hand, checking behind me even though I knew how irrational that was. When I got back, there were more requests waiting, different platforms, different usernames, same tone. He said we had chemistry. He said he felt a connection. He said I didn't get to decide when things ended by myself. He said that wasn't fair. Fair. I finally replied once, just to say stop contacting me. My hands were shaking so badly it took effort to type. I regretted it immediately. The response came fast. He said now we were communicating again. He said this was progress. He said he knew I'd come around. I blocked him everywhere again. The next day, I woke up to silence. No notifications, no messages. I almost convinced myself it was over, that he'd gotten bored, that this was just a weird one-night thing. Then I opened the app again out of curiosity. New profile. Same face. The bio this time said something about persistence and honesty, about not giving up on meaningful connections, about how some people ran when things got real. I reported it. A few hours later, the profile disappeared. I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. Over the next week, I stayed off apps completely. Didn't post anything. Didn't tag locations. Didn't change my routine. I told a friend what happened. She helped me lock down privacy settings on everything. Nothing else happened. Until 2 weeks later, I got a message from a profile I didn't recognize. Different app. Different name. The message didn't mention dating at all. It just said it was nice seeing me again, even if I didn't notice. I froze. I blocked it without responding. I never saw him in person again. At least, I don't think I did. But sometimes when I'm out, I catch myself scanning faces longer than I should, wondering if that's him. Wondering if he's watching from a distance, waiting for the next opening. I don't unmatch people casually anymore. I don't ghost, but I also don't explain. I just let things fade in the app where they belong. And every time I see a new profile with a face that feels familiar in the wrong way, my stomach tightens.